Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Your host Talia once again welcome you all to the BS level biology program. Students, there is something special about our today's program that distinguishes it from the rest of the programs of our series. And that differentiating feature is that today is the last program of our second series. I hope that this last lecture would also play a pivotal role in enhancing your biological knowledge. Now let's welcome our expert, Dr. Muhammad Azad. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, what is the topic of discussion for today's lecture?
Talia, we are going to continue our previous lecture of evolution, and today first we'll be going with the concept of speciation, what a species is, and then we are going to discuss how the different species are going to evolve from already existing species. So students, starting with the topic of speciation, first we are going to discuss the concept of species, what a species is, and then we are going to go with the different mechanism, how the species are going to evolve from already existing species. So going with our slides first, what is a species? This is not a very straightforward question, as most of the individual believes. So these two birds, these are the members of different species. So both of these, they are having many mimicking features, but they belong to the different species. Similarly, all of these individuals, they belong to a single species, humans, but all of these are different from each other. Similarly, here, all of these animals, they are also belonging to a single species, but all of these are looking different from each other. So what is a species? Basically, species is a group of individuals capable of interbreeding to produce fertile offspring. This is the biological concept. Like all attempts to define a species, it has many problems. So what are the problems? So one problem is the biological species concept, and that is for asexually reproducing organism like these bacteria, what constitutes a species? So you are going to look at these bacteria. They are different in their outlook. Going with the precise definition of species, a group of organisms with similar morphological, physiological, biochemical and behavioral features which can freely interbreed to produce fertile offspring and are reproductively isolated from other species. Students, so basically what does it definition is going to explain? This is going to explain that if a group of individuals, they are mimicking in their morphology, it means in their appearance, in their structure, and then they are having similar physiology. What do you mean? That they means they are going to perform the similar function. The third aspect, that they must be similar in their biochemistry. What this biochemistry? They must be having the same number of chromosomes. So and they must be similar in their behavior. Four similarities must be there. Similarity in their morphology, in their physiology, in their biochemistry and in their behavior. And then another important part of this definition is that these individuals should freely interbreed with each other. Free interbreeding should be there, and another important component is there. As a result of this interbreeding, there must be fertile offspring. That offspring must also produce the living organisms, the next generation. If that, you can say, the offspring is unable to produce further, then this is called as sterile, and these individuals are not belonging to the same species. It means they are reproductively isolated. So we'll be just focusing on these aspects during our, you can say, the further slides of slideshow. How many species are there on the planet Earth? Nobody knows. We don't know how many species are there, but up till now about 2 million species have been described. They have been discovered. There are many more. We have not discovered that till now. Estimate of existing species, it ranges from 4 million to 100 million, with 10 to 15 millions being a more commonly considered upper estimate, but these are the estimates. What the speciation is there? Speciation is defined as the formation of new species. As new species evolve, populations become reproductively isolated. And what is the reproductive isolation? So if the members of two populations cannot interbreed and produce fertile offspring, then we are going to label that these organisms, they are reproductively isolated. Speciation, that is the evolution of new species, that let's say this is one of the organism and that is going to give a new variety of organism. This will be considered as one species, this will be considered as other species, because they are not similar in their morphology, in their outlook. So what speciation is there? Basically the group of individuals are isolated, and how they can be isolated, it may be geographical isolation or it may be the reproductive isolation. So geographically these organisms, they can be isolated, or they can be isolated by their reproductive behaviors, and then after a long period they are going to evolve into a new species. Going with the outlook of isolating mechanism, first there are reproductive barriers. Any mechanism that impedes two species from producing fertile or viable hybrid offspring, the barriers which are there, they can be pre-zygotic barriers or post-zygotic barriers. So first looking at the pre-zygotic barriers, so it can be temporal isolation, breeding occurs at different times for different species, or it can be habitat isolation. What it is? Species breed in different habitats. The third, it can be behavioral isolation, little or no sexual attraction between the species. Continuing the same pre-zygotic, another is the mechanical isolation. Structural differences prevent gamete exchange, or it can be the gametic isolation. Gametes die before uniting with the gametes of other species, or gametes fail to unite. Post-zygotic reproductive isolation, we can go with the example of a cross between the horse and donkey. The result is the mule, and mule is sterile. It means that is unable to produce offspring. That is going to give us the clue that horse and donkey, these are the two different species. Many intrinsic reproductive isolating mechanisms are going to drive speciations. So it can be ecological isolation. Even if they live in the same place, the organism cannot mate if they do not come in contact with each other. Another is the temporal isolation. Even if they come in contact, they cannot mate if they breed at the different times of the seasons. Behavioral isolation, even if they breed at the same time, they will not mate if they are not attracted to one another. Courtship rituals like these are critical for mating within a species, but ineffective for attracting members of other species. Mechanical isolation, even if they attract one another, they cannot mate if they are not physically compatible. Gametic isolation, even if they are physically compatible, an embryo will not form if the egg and sperm do not fuse properly. Hybrid inviability or infertility, even if the fertilization occurs successfully, the offspring may not survive, or if it survives, may not reproduce, like we have already discussed the example of mule. Species are coming and going. Best estimate from the fossil record indicate that greater than 99% of species that have excited are now extinct. A typical lifetime for a species is about 1 million years. Two patterns of speciation is there. One is non-branching evolution, so one giving one, and other is the branching evolution, so one individual giving the two different variety. Speciation can be classified under two major categories: interspecific hybridization, if two different species give rise a new species; intraspecific speciation, if a single species give rise a new species, which is further classified into allopatric and sympatric speciation.
So here I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is the difference between sympatric and allopatric speciation?
Yes, Talia, basically as far as interspecific hybridization is there, once the two species mate, a new species like mule, so that is very clear. But many students are going to find it difficult that how a single species can give a different variety of species. So going to describe that how a single species can give the different variety of individuals. So basically there is allopatric. Allo mean different, patric mean places. If the individuals of a single species, they get separated and they are going to grow at different places. So they are going to have different environmental pressure, and over a period of time the best individuals in that environment, they are being selected, and now they become the different species. But sympatric means, sim means same, patric means place, that individuals are living at the same place under the same environmental conditions, but still they can give us the different species. How it is possible? Yes. So these are the mutations which are going to occur. We have already discussed a lot about mutations. So mutation can occur at any time. These are unpredictable changes. And once a mutation is going to produce a new individuals, so that individual may not be mating with the other individuals in the population. So that is creation of a new species while the individuals are going to live at the same place. And this is called as sympatricSpeciation. Looking at the details of allopatric and sympatric speciations. So speciation can be allopatric. It occurs when population of a species become geographically isolated. Sympatric speciation is the evolution of reproductive isolation within a randomly mating population, and there is another term called as parapatricSpeciation. What it is? So it is the evolution of reproductive isolation between populations that are continuously disturbed in space, continuously distributed. Okay ji, repeating this parapatric. There is a third variety of speciation which is called as parapatricSpeciation, and this is basically the evolution of reproductive isolation between populations that are continuously distributed in space, so that there is movement of individuals and hence the gene flow is there between them. So if we are going to look at these allopatric speciation, this was, let's say, the species, and they get separated. There is a physical barrier among these. Now they are just having the different environmental condition, and they are having different, so they are going to grow in the different individuals. But sympatric means the individuals are going to live in the same place, but by mutation a different variety of individuals, they are going to appear. Possible types of barriers in allopatric speciation. So it is physical or geographical isolation is there in case of allopatric speciation. So these can be the mountains, it can be sea, or it can be a piece of land, or these can be glacial masses, or this can be different valleys which are there occurring as a barrier and preventing the flow of gene between the individuals. Sympatric speciation is the result of radical change in the genome that produce a reproductively isolated subpopulation within the parent population. So plant evolution, polyploidy, we have discussed already. Doubling the number of chromosome is going to give us the tetraploid individuals, and that will be a new species. Plants that have had a hybrid or polyploid episode in their evolutionary history. So this is the wheat, tobacco, cotton, bananas and potatoes. All of these, they are having more than 2 sets of number of chromosome, and they are having the events in their life cycle of polyploidy. Parapatric speciation can be produced by founder effects, where very few individuals or indeed a single pregnant female get displaced to a location which may be islands or a lake that was previously uninhabited by that species. Looking at one of the animation, looking at the different variety of mechanism of speciation, first going through the allopatric speciation. So it requires the total genetic isolation by geographical separation. For example, a population of rodent could transfer seeds of the plants to a nearby valley. So these are the rodents, and they have transferred the seed here at this part, and these seeds have blown away and they have gone on the other. Now there is a physical barrier. Physical barrier of the mountain is there, and these, you can say, the physical barrier, they have isolated plant and they must adapt to the different environmental conditions. conditions here in this part are different from the condition on the other parts. So that is going to be there. The best individuals which are going to survive under the new conditions, they are going to grow. And what will be the result? Eventually the two population will not be able to interbreed, and thus a isolated population has evolved into a new species. Now these are the two new species. So these were the environmental forces which have created the two different species, and this is the allopatric speciation. Going with the sympatric speciations, sympatric speciation occurs without physical separation. Individuals are going to live at the same place. Let's say our plant might interbreed with another plant species in the area, and what is there? Let's say this is the interbreeding with the different plants which is going to occur. This is species A, this is species Z, and each of these plants is diploid, but one has 2 chromosomes and other has 3 pairs of chromosome. Although these plants of two distinct species, they can mate, their haploid gamete fuse to form a hybrid zygote. So this was having the 4 chromosome, this was having the 6th chromosome. By meiosis they are reduced to 2 in the gamete and they are reduced to 3, and once fertilization is going to occur, breeding is going to occur, so what will be there? So these will be the 5 chromosomes in the hybrid, and 5s they cannot undergo the process of meiosis. So this individual is sterile. So this individual cannot reproduce further, since the mixture of chromosome cannot pair during you can say the process of meiosis. Now what is going to happen? A mitotic error occur, and that is the doubling of chromosomes. We have already discussed with reference to plant that we are going to induce this doubling with the help of colchicine. So during the you can say the DNA synthesis, so these chromosomes are going to double in number, and now 2n is 10 instead of 5. Now they are there in the form of pairs, and now meiosis is possible, and it is going to produce the gametes, and these gametes they are going to fuse together, and they are going to give us the viable you can say the plants. So that plant will be fertile, and that is going to continue you can say the rest of the life cycle, but that plant is not going to mate original species. So it means that will be a new species, this is going to arrive. So this is the self fertilization which can occur. So it can go through the asexual as well as sexual reproduction, and this fertile hybrid plant, that is allopolyploid, because this was the self pollination which has occurred, and ultimately so this was a species A, this was Z, both are going to live at the same place, but they have given a new species that is unable to interbreed with the two original species. Going with the third variety, that is the parapatricSpeciations. So in the parapatricSpeciations, it results from isolation between the adjacent members of the individual. Suppose one edge of the valley here, it become a dumping place ground for DDT waste. So here some of the individuals are going to drop the DDT waste. So what will be there? The abrupt change in the environment will be there, mostly destructive to the plant growth. So plants will not grow in this area, and if there is you can say the some change is there, and that is going to result into the plant. So most of the plant due to DDT, they are going to decrease in growth. This is a destructive you can say the wrong. Strong selection pressure could lead to DDT resistant population. If any plant is going to survive in this area, so that plant must be tolerating the DDT, and this is the DDT resistant plant that is going to be there, and these resistant plant may not be able to breed with the adjacent non-resistant plant. So this is a new species which is going to occur, and it is unable to breed with this species A, and this is parapatricSpeciation. So dear students, so these were the different mechanism of allopatric, in which the separation of population is there. Parapatric, if you can say the some new event is going to occur in the population, and population mean in the environmental you can say the side, and sympatric if it is the mutation that is going to occur. So there are certain other mechanisms of evolution going to go with these mechanisms. One is convergent evolution, and what it is, species from different evolutionary branches may come to resemble one another if they live in the similar environment. If the different species they start living in the similar environment, due to environmental pressure they are going to mimic with each other, like ostrich and emu. Both of these, if they are living you can say at the same place, so they are going to have certain mimicking characteristics. Other can be coevolution, and what it is, evolutionary change in which one species act as a selective force on the second species, inducing adaptation that in turn act as a selective force on the first species. And here we can go with the example of acacia ants and acacia trees, hummingbirds and plants with flower with long tubes. We can conclude evolution occurs when genetic equilibrium is disrupted by mutations, by migration of population from one area to another area, or by genetic drift. What is genetic drift? Genetic drift is a shift in allele frequencies in a population due to random events or the chance. If small population, chance can significantly affect allele frequencies from one generation to the next. Looking at this animation, when two populations of the same species become geographically isolated, that is allopatric or geographical speciation can take place. So let's say this is a, you can say, the aquatic ecosystem or some of the watery area that is going to separate both of these. These are the products of AllopatricSpeciation. In other instances, a few members of a population cross an existing physical barrier, forming a new isolated population. An example of this took place among populations of picture-winged Drosophila in one of the Hawaiian islands. When a small number of fruit flies migrated to another islands, to a younger islands, they founded a new species. This is the founding effect which is there. The new population differs genetically from the parent population because a small number of founder flies has only an incomplete representation of the genes found in the parent population. So this was the, you can say, the migration from this island to the next island. The new islands forms, flies migrated to each one in turn. After arriving on the new island, the founder flies bred with each other rather than returning to the islands they came from. The new population becomes physically isolated from one on the original land, and they start growing on the other piece of land. Now the different environmental conditions are there on both of these pieces of land. Over the period of time, unique selective pressure in the new environment causes the population to evolve to the new traits. At some point, these flies will no longer be able to interbreed with the parent population. They have become a new species. Dear student, to summarize today's topic, so basically it is interspecific hybridization. If the two species are going to give us the new species, or it can be intraspecific speciation, that individuals of the single species, they are going to give us the new species if they are geographically isolated or some mutation is going to occur. Students, so this is the last program of the series, and in this series basically we discussed about the genetics, Mendelian genetics, and then we have discussed the, you can say, the crossing over and linkages. We discussed about the transmission of, you can say, the genetic material, how it is going to occur, especially with reference to bacteria. Then we have discussed the genetic engineering techniques to improve our lifestyle. Then we have discussed about the application of these genetic techniques to improve our crops. And in the last programs, we have just discussed with these concepts of evolution. That's all for today.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Students, I hope that this series provided you with additional help other than your textbooks and gave you new concepts to ponder upon. I hope this series proved to be fruitful for you. On this note, your host Talia, our expert Dr. Muhammad Azad, and our whole production team would sign off from the show. Take care of yourself and best of luck for the future. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.